Hello, I'm Rob Doherty and this is the FSTVS podcast, Executive Edition, supported by Liberary Consulting and hosted by Julian Scott, animation consultant for Film London. In this series we'll be chatting to the big hitters in the animation industry and discovering a little bit more about what they do, how they got there, their thoughts on the animation industry, and, I hope, get to meet the person behind that executive title. Julian's guest on the podcast today is the inimitable Vanessa Chapman. Before starting her kids' TV career at ITV and working on shows like Art Attack and Rosie and Jim, Vanessa's career started at the Mirror newspaper and then BBC Radio, with sidelines in fire eating, bobsledding and rally driving, apparently. These days, consulting globally, in particular with Cartoon Media, the European organisation behind Cartoon Business, Cartoon Forum and Cartoon Movie, Vanessa has a great take on the wider animation landscape. Her insights in this chat into the business and financing side of the children's TV industry are invaluable, and we're hugely grateful to her for taking the time to talk to Julian, especially as, in her own words, she hates being the one answering the questions. So, over to you, Julian.
Vanessa, hi. You run VJC Media, which you describe yourself as a creative and business agency that works internationally with broadcasters, media companies, brands, creators, and investors. You've developed, produced, commissioned, and acquired intellectual property across multiple platforms and supported various clients on IP development, franchise building, business planning, fundraising, and M&A activity. How are you doing?
Exhausted.
I'm not surprised.
Is that what I do? Yes, I do. And it's a very broad church, but very enjoyable, hardworking. But I'm lucky enough to have developed numerous skills over the years, I hope, which I can share at my age now with young creators, newcomers to the industry, existing media companies, some broadcasters. And also in recent years, I've been working with a lot of investors. Who would ever have known? So it's certainly varied, but there seems a great need for it at this present time as well, when the industry is going through some turmoil. And for me, it kind of embraces a lot that I have done over the years, both from a creative perspective, starting out as a journalist, always a storyteller, going into radio and television across many genres, and then being very fortunate to get into the children's and family and adult animation and media business. So, and learning some commercial and financial skills along the way. So I've really combined those into an agency. It's a very discreet agency because a lot of people who come to me want discretion as a byword because commercial information is power. And basically, I have a team of people who are consultants who work with me across both development and the creative industries, but also legal, financial, business, marketing, and PR. So it's the complete package which I can bring together those relevant people for projects and for long-term retainers, which I have. And I'm also lucky to be working with a number of wonderful media industries and businesses, including animation studios, where I'm working quite often with founders and with small to medium-sized companies who are looking to grow their business and get themselves ready for potential fundraising. So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis, and my work ethic is renowned. And that's probably why this morning I couldn't get into this link as I was feeling slightly tired. But it's a pleasure anyway to speak to you again, Julian.
Well, I'm glad we managed to make it work. Now, you mentioned discretion there as part of your sort of, I suppose, your portfolio of skills, and I want to sort of flip back. You mentioned journalism and everything else because you started your career as a Fleet Street journalist, and I wonder if that's why everyone who talks to you walks away realizing that they have told you absolutely everything and you've revealed absolutely nothing. And on behalf of the entire kids and animation entertainment business, this podcast is payback. You're going to have to reveal everything about your rally driving, going down an Olympic bobsleigh track in Switzerland as part of a 4-man crew with 3 male military officers. Basically everything. How do you feel about that?
I will reveal things that are in the public domain, but there are many things that rest in my brain that I am very careful about. And that's something I learned, the techniques of basically asking questions and the talent of listening. I don't always listen nowadays, but that was something I learned. And also one of the other skills was very much of when I was training to be a journalist and doing what's very old-fashioned now, and I apologise to any of the Festivus members who've never heard of shorthand, being able to look at your interviewee's eyes and be able to write on your notepad in shorthand without looking down. And that was an amazing skill. And people always used to not realize that I was actually taking copious notes about everything they were saying to me to be able to review coming back. But I think all of those skills, have just become second nature. And there's an expression that says, once you're a journalist, you're always a journalist. And power is all in the word. And that's why we all have to be a little bit careful occasionally, especially with social media, what we say and what can be taken out of context. So I am careful, and I hope that's why the majority of people that I work with come to me to know that I will listen, but I will not blab unless I'm asked to.
No, I mean seriously, I completely get what you're saying, and I do genuinely understand that a large part of what you do now is, discretion is a very, very important part of what you do, and confidentiality. But can we just nip back to that journalistic career? Because you did you not win a place on a Mirror Group newspaper national training scheme? What made you go for that?
Well, it's a long story, and I won't bore everybody with the whole ins and outs of it. But I was actually due to be going to university to study English literature and American studies because I love reading. But they're always in the back of my mind was my passion for news, current affairs. I don't know where it came from, but it was somewhere deep in my psyche. So I was working at a very trendy boutique over the summer before I was due to go to uni, when a friend rang up the shop, because we didn't have mobiles in the same way then, and said, I've seen an advert for a national newspaper training scheme in The Guardian or The Times, and our family didn't read The Guardian, so I wouldn't have spotted it. So I thought, they said, you must apply for it. So I applied for it without thinking that anything would happen. And as a result of that, I really had no fear, because it would be interesting, but I thought I had absolutely no chance of getting through. But by dint of my interviews, and then I had to actually write almost a whole mini newspaper with stories and headlines. I had to do, even in those days, a very rigorous personality test. I got through and shortlisted. And then the glorious moment, just as I was about to near to packing my big trunk to go to uni with all my books that I'd read over the summer, I got the note to say that I'd won one of 10 places. It was shocking. And equally, the other thing that I had done is not told my mum and dad, because it always been that I would go to university. And so I had to pluck up the courage. My father was a little shocked, but because he didn't go to university, so it was a proud moment as a father for him that I was going. And they both sat down and said, if it's what you want to do, and this seems like a once in a lifetime opportunity, then we will stand by you and help you do that. So I dutifully and very kind of with a sense of regret to some degree wrote to the uni and said, I'm really sorry, I've got this opportunity. And I embarked upon my long training, which led me at the age of 21 as almost the youngest girl in the newsroom at the Daily Mirror when it was a really campaigning newspaper. And had some remarkable journalists working there. So I was extremely lucky. And I know I'd never be doing that now. And I might never have got into television or children's and family programming if I hadn't embarked on that chance kind of advert, which then led me to this long and winding road that I call my life and career.
And you did incredibly well in Fleet Street. You worked in news, gossip columns, and features, and as a showbiz writer. You then went on to BBC Radio, where I understand you formed a fire-eating duo with a female colleague nicknamed the Broadcasters Who Breathed Fire. Is that right?
I regret slightly having told that to you at some time, but actually we were always, we worked very hard, but we also, as a team at BBC Radio, we also did play quite hard, and we all had to come up with a party trick. So my colleague, who's still in BBC Radio, will remain nameless because she's quite a respectable person these days. We used to dress up, we used to wear a rain mac, and then we would go out and we would entertain our young newsreader viewers when we used to go out with our fire eating act. And it was, it was widely published. And I don't do it now because, of course, one of the things you have to do is remember not to breathe in, because you would kill yourself. So it's a delicate act, and one which, came to play and was quite useful when you wanted to kind of entertain your listeners, especially after you had been giving them very, very boring and sometimes quite shocking and depressing news. To be able to lighten up their days and evenings was always a little bit of a tonic for both my colleague and myself. But I hasten to add, this will not be a repeat of this at any time at cartoon events or at NIPCOM or at CMC. That is the end of my long-ish career for a year and a half as a fire eater.
I'm slightly disappointed that we're never going to see it again, but I guess health and safety probably prevents it as well these days.
Indeed. Thank goodness for everybody.
When you moved into television, you were working in Factual as a producer and senior program editor at ITV, and then you switched genres and became the Commissioner for Kids and Family at what was then ITV Network Centre. What made that change? Was there something in your personal life or professional life that drove you to want to work in kids and family?
It was a big shock to suddenly be offered this opportunity, because I had been very happy for 11 years, basically starting out from right at the bottom, which I did to get into commercial television, even though I'd been a senior producer at the BBC and radio. And I decided that there was an opportunity for me to grow within a channel that I respected. So I started as a researcher and worked my way right up to being an editor of a program in charge of large teams of people. And I had no real desire to leave. But one day I got a call from the network director, because I had moved on from political programs to factual programs to entertainment shows, and I'd also started some youth programs, and the network was looking to expand its remit beyond preschool, etc., into older and family. And he asked me whether I would consider leaving my cherished home, LWT, which was remarkable, to come and to the Lonely Towers at the ITV Network Centre to run the children's block. I remember very clearly that he kept ringing me because I was in two minds and saying, this is like giving birth to an elephant, Vanessa. It has the longest gestation period of any mammal. And I waded up and talked to my partner. And I think in the depths of my mind, if I hadn't have gone into journalism and if I'd been at university, I probably would have followed in my mother and my great-grandmother's footsteps, who were very respected head teachers. So I spent a lot of my growing up period, going to schools with my mum and then my great-grandmother, who was a remarkable woman who at the age of 70 was invited to go to the US to teach at high school there. So we were always a go-getting family. So I think deep in my mind, I've always had a passion and an affection and engagement with children of all ages, particularly younger children. And for me, it was an opportunity to work across genres because in those days, children's ITV was a proper block and a proper channel. And we did everything from preschool to live action to drama to game shows to entertainment shows, popular factual programming, and the opportunity to also work more commercially with the sales teams on the advertising part of the remit, as well as the opportunity to go to across the world. Because I was offered to be part of the ITV buying team, and that's a team of buyers who go to things like the LA screenings. And those are amazing opportunities where you go and meet the studios in LA, Disney, Warner Brothers, you meet the creators, you meet the studio bosses. And that seemed a fantastic opportunity. It was a remarkable amount of work because there was not a vast team of people, and I knew that. Myself, a PA, a couple of PAs, and part-time of a scheduler and a lawyer. And I had to do everything from commission, acquire, do the contracts, schedule, etc. So it was a baptism of fire to start with. But I must say that it opened my eyes to a bigger world, which I think is really important for us all now, particularly in the kids and family industry, to be able to look beyond our territory. And that's what I think is a fantastic opportunity for anybody coming into kids, family and adult animation and all the kind of cross-platform, is it is a global business, and it has been a global business ever since I was at ITV. We stopped commissioning. We used to commission 100% of animated series. Can you believe that? And then the pressure was on and we went down to 90, 60, and then people had to start looking at partners. But that was before any other genre within television had been looking. Maybe sport, but sport did that because it was a money spinner. But for kids and family, it was another skill base and a requirement to be more financially and world-facing, which obviously is critical as we come through this period now for all of us who are working in this media industry that we're in and market.
And I mean, nowadays we hear a lot about legacy IP. Was that, back when you were commissioning, was that something that figured highly in your decision making?
This is going to be tricky because I did once get into trouble with the ITV directors of the various regions for commissioning over and above the quota of independent producers, which had not been done before. So in answer to your question, I respected that there were legacy and franchisable programs. So most of those were acquisitions, probably. So they were a lot of the animated series from Warner Brothers, etc. But there were also legacy properties which were amazing that constantly rated. For those of you who remember Art Attack, How, for example, and some of Anne Wood's very early programs before she went on to illustrious ventures such as Teletubbies. And there were great shows like Rosie and Jim and also Tots TV. These were kind of like the stalwarts of a schedule where you kind of positioned those in prime slots so that you then could take chances on new and different IP. So for me, that was part of the joy of ITV. It was a risk-taking strategy at times, which I got criticised for, but it did give people who hadn't had a chance in the industry to try it out if they had a good idea. So yes, I other than getting told off quite a few times that I did, I was quite proud deep down underneath it all, and will admit it now that I did exceed the independent quota when I was at Children's ITV.
Good for you. Long may it continue, is what I say. After ITV, I think I'm right in saying you went on to work with Lego. And at Lego, you worked on their strategy. They wanted to move into TV and film, develop new IP, and you ended up running the division. How did you take a brand like Lego? I mean, talk about legacy IP, which is so incredibly well known for small plastic bricks from which you can build almost anything, and move that brand into TV and film. Was it a 360-degree approach to brand and business?
Well, again, I was so lucky to be approached by the Lego company, which is more than a company. I mean, it's a way of life. And for me, again, it was yet another departure. Some people were surprised. Because if you think about it, all my career and most of our careers who are passionate about what we do in kids and family, etc., and adult, is that we stick within that media world. And this was not a media world. Media was very little as part of that. It was a manufacturing industry, essentially, with a brand building and marketing department. So anyone who came from what they perceived to be the frilly, frothy, showbiz world was somehow looked upon. So I think from my perspective, I was very lucky that I worked with some tremendous couple of executives. Connie Coucher was an amazing executive who was there for many years, and she became the first person who I could ever call a mentor. So cut a long story short, the challenge was both to understand the business, and that was part of my education. So I literally was fortunate to travel the world, meet all of the main both the manufacturers, the supply chain, the markets, so Japan, the US, across Europe. Spent a long time in a very glamorous place called Billund, where the Lego family, the Christiansen family, come from, in Jutland in Denmark. And it was really about me understanding what was the philosophy behind the brand. Because it isn't about toys, it's about open-ended play, and it's about having that relationship with the consumer. So I actually spent time with the supply chain at the factory in Billund. I worked on the call center. I actually ran the shop over the summer, a couple of weeks over the summer holidays as part of at Legoland. So I really imbibed the atmosphere, which was part of what they wanted me to do. And then we started educating everybody across the brand. So bringing storytellers in, and letting them understand that actually being creative is as important a process as taking a brick and putting it in a machine and it comes out the other end. There's a lot of creativity and processes that go into it. And that, I think, was the secret, was not to go in and just bulldozer in, which the Lego company would not have wanted, but to be sensitive to the to the philosophy and what had been around for 60 years, with a very passionate family whom I was very lucky to get to know. So, we developed the first IP we developed was the first one that Lego had ever, the Lego company, because we were taught Lego as a name never stands on its own. It always has an accompaniment. So the Lego company, and I still say that today, it was an action figure. And the character and story team, very small team that we put together, basically developed 4 books based loosely on Polynesian fable. Learned what the sweet spot for this brand was: a 7-year-old boy. And we knew everything we had to learn everything a 7-year-old boy did. And we actually produced a way of doing storytelling, which now is very prevalent, which was 360 storytelling, because, our characters and stories didn't just need to live on TV or film. They need to live in every aspect that Lego and the Lego company and its products touched. So we experimented with the fantastic design team, fantastic marketing team. How could we enthrall children, engage that 7-year-old boy and above? And we changed all the packaging, and we had a little code on the packaging, which if you went into the website, you would hear the story of your character from that code on the packaging. We were one of the first to do cheat codes in the games that were produced. We did a record deal as well on the music for the project, which was called Bionicle. And overall, there was a room where it was covered with sticky notes, which literally looked at every story that we were, as like the guardians of the Bionicle story and characters, that we had an influence over. So that could be the ad spots, that's the packaging, that could be we did 3 direct-to-videos, films when they were very popular in those days. So it was, again, yet another innovative advance and a great learning for me, which I can now use a lot in my work and with other people. But I will never forget my time at the Lego company. It was formative. It was hard work. And if you think I had to report in to the CFO and the CEO of the whole Lego company, I really had to improve my financial knowledge, etc., which probably, again, is why I'm doing a little bit of what I'm doing today, if that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. What is really interesting is, how you described, sort of working in the shop and understanding the pipeline and really, really understanding every facet and every person who worked in that business, and completely absorbing what the sort of I suppose the ethics and the of the company were, because. And you also said, not going in and sort of bulldozing in to try and change things. And with the changes that are happening now in the TV industry, and the shift of the older kids audience to YouTube and Roblox, do you think those platforms are commercially viable for producers today? And do you think there's anything that needs to change on either side, either on, from YouTube or from Roblox, or from the producer's approach to those 2 platforms?
I think change is always part of our life, and you either embrace change or you don't embrace change. I'm a bit masochistic, and I suppose I have always had to embrace change. I think there have been technological changes throughout our time. When I was first making programs, we used beta film. Now look at where we are. So I suppose, from my perspective, it is a tough market, and I think everybody I speak to across the industry I'm hoping the doom and gloom approach will be over for a while, because we have to adapt and we have to understand what's going on. I think that YouTube is a challenging place now. I think those who started off being able to create in YouTube when there wasn't as much competition, had a more fortunate time. I think I hear a lot of media companies say, "Oh, we're going to do digital first, and we're going to put our IP digitally first." That's good. But out there, it's very hard now to be discovered, as we all know. And also, it's about refreshing your content as often as possible. And as we who've worked in trying to package financing together for any IP, is where do you get the financing to be able to feed a YouTube channel? So those are the challenges. I do think that there are still opportunities, and I think the opportunities is particularly for any of the more newcomers to our industry are to be brave and to try ideas out. I've talked to people who are trying ideas out on Instagram now. And yes, Roblox. Next year when I do my Cartoon Next, which is part of the Cartoon Masters program, we will be looking at who some of the creators, young creators who have put their ideas, or some people might say, taken an established IP and created something around that IP and have come away and made money. I'll be talking to girls who now, a UK girl who actually has an organisation that she started when she was in her teens called Girls Who Code. And I think there are lots of movements that are there. It is tough. I think, there's an opportunity with short form content to be able to test your ideas out there. But I think, talking to some of the movers and shakers in our business across Europe, which I do on a regular basis in my role as a content director for Cartoon, is that everybody is looking for new business paradigms. So people are looking at Roblox, and we will have a session with the BBC talking about this autumn about their relationship with Roblox and what they're doing. And I think it's really about being aware what's out there. And also diversifying, because, narrative is not just TV and film. We all know that. It's also games or comic books or webisodes. There's a variety of different touch points. And I'm very fortunate to be able to find individuals and creators and media companies who are doing new and different things and are challenging where we are today. And I think, there will be different opportunities, but it's not going to be easy. And we all have to listen and do our homework and understand where those might be. My fear is that will everybody survive? Because the industry really grew, particularly in kids and family, over the last 10 or 15 years. I know I did a mapping exercise, which I do for investors, and, I could have mapped many, many other companies. I think 52 companies in the UK who have some animation, and you will know, Julian, as you are very active, particularly with the fantastic organisation Film London, that there are many more. We're sadly seeing some liquidations, some administrations, but I think, the good will out, and there will be opportunities for people. And I think particularly the social media savvy generation, looking where those opportunities are. There's anime adjacent. Who would have thought that, the anime, which is technically has to be produced in Japan, is now moving. And, if you're a young person, I'm an anime and manga fanatic despite my age and my looks, and I'm fascinated by how that's happening. I think adult animation is really, a really interesting area, maybe not the streamers in the same way. Looking at genres, we prophesied at this Cartoon Next in April, which we did in Marseille, that some of the licensing agents thought that horror was a next potential genre. So, at the end of the day, if you talk to people, you research and you understand the market, that's going to give you a great advantage, to see where you can position yourself for the future.
You mentioned just then that you're the overall content and program director for the Brussels-based cartoon organisation, and you're working on their master's program, which comprises cartoon business and also the cross-media event Cartoon Next. The things that you've just described about potential opportunities and people doing their research and trying out new things, is that what those two conferences focus on?
Well, it's fascinating because I think most people, wherever you come from, if you have any connection with animation, will be familiar with Cartoon, which is a non-for-profit organisation, which has been around for many years, has its two pitching events that we're all aware of, Cartoon Forum, which has really grown from the early days, and now has many hundreds and up to 1,000 people coming to it, buyers, etc., and then Cartoon Movie. So those are the pure pitching events. But what's being interesting is that Cartoon has been looking to do a deeper dive into our industry, in the way that it approaches our industry, and it has a slight education role. So the master's program is that deeper dive. It's an intelligent look at our industry, a very focused look, and I was fortunate to be asked to come in and have a look at some of the events at Cartoon, and we, with the management team, decided to merge a couple of events to create something called Cartoon Next. And, as the name suggests, it's not rocket science, it's all forward looking. Mm-hmm. And that's where it's, learning about where the innovations are happening, what the future might look like. It really attracts now quite a young audience, which is great. We look at students take part and have from the region where it comes from. And then Cartoon Business, which I've moderated at previously. This year, I've been fortunate to be invited to come and take a look at Cartoon Business. And as the name suggests, sadly, we're not very imaginative in our choice of titles for some of these events. But it says it is what it says on the tin, and it's moving to Brussels. And really, it's about, at a time where we are all wondering what the future, what is happening now. What can we do now? This is going to be a deeper dive into our business across platforms. So we'll have, I look across the Europe to find the right topics. That's probably where the journalist in me comes from, and find the right speakers. And so, we'll be tackling the topics that the participants and producers have asked, that we listen. So we'll have a private equity session. It's really hard sometimes to get private equity investors to come and financiers to come in, looking at what do you need to do to get yourself investment ready? Because everybody's asking me almost on a daily basis, we need money, Vanessa, where can we get it from? We'll be looking at the BBC's approach, as I mentioned, to Roblox, and I think that will be very interesting because this autumn there will be some research coming out from that as well. And we'll be looking at YouTube from the perspective of one of the longest standing YouTube channels, which comes from Argentina, which is the most viewed. And that will give a really interesting perspective about how they're surviving the YouTube issues. So, across the board, it really is a very focused, it's not boring. It's not a talk shop. It has panels, keynotes, case studies where people literally talk about how they've got to where they are. So there's a famous guy called Joe Darris that some of you might know. He's quite a character, but his story, which he will talk very honestly about, the good points and the trials and tribulations, are kind of mirror how the kids and family industry has developed. He started out in Belgium at Studio 100, and now has achieved 2 sets of investment, and he has some very strong views about why we need to listen to the market and use our common sense going forward. So, it's a mix of people talking. There's always lots of Q&A, and also we have some fun as well. It's a very informal event, and I think, for me, it's such an honor to be asked to do it. I take my responsibility hugely seriously. I spend a lot more time on this than I should do, because I do have a business to run, but ultimately seeing people being able to ask questions is extraordinary.
This podcast is made possible thanks to the support of the awesome Liberi Consulting. Liberi offers specially tailored industry-related training courses. Check them out at libericonsulting.com. That's LIBERI consulting.com. You can also find links to their fantastic courses on the Festivus website.
I'm very lucky, as I mentioned, to have been asked to take on this very responsible role as content director. And essentially what that means is that I look at the whole programme for both of the events, and this time Cartoon Business and Cartoon Next, to select the right topics that reflect the needs and questions that we all have at the present time, and select the speakers. Which is fantastic because I look at people that I also want to hear from, and I manage to try to get them to come along. But it is there's no doubt that it's quite an arduous process, and coming up with 12 to 14 compelling and engaging sessions over a couple of days. But both events, this will be a new departure in a way for Cartoon Business, because basically we will be going to Brussels, right at the heart of Europe to a degree. So this will be my first one. So fingers crossed that I can pull it off. We've got some new initiatives that we're bringing to bear on it, like the business clinic, which we hope to do at the end of a couple of days, where we invite experts and specialists, and participants can actually book times with them, either on legal, financial, franchise matters. So that's a new innovation. So each year it's fun to look at what we can do different and what we can do to really reflect and help the industry, which is what cartoon intention is. So even though it's hard work, I have to say that I relish it. I said earlier, my work ethic is legendary. I'm hoping one day that I will not say that any longer. But it's something that I really enjoy and I'm lucky to do.
And those are the clinics you mentioned at the end of each day of Cartoon Business. I mean, everybody's looking for money, aren't they? Everybody wants money either into their projects, into their companies for company growth. Do you find sometimes that, I suppose, sort of creatively led, creative founders of studios, animation studios, need a little bit of sort of coaxing or jigging about to make them more, I'll not say more interesting, but more, I suppose, more investor ready?
I think being investor ready is like a full-time operation and preparation, because I do go into certain companies and I'm working with a couple on a long-term basis, and they are founder businesses. And obviously, running a business starts off for some people a bit like a lifestyle. But unfortunately, if you want to grow and you want to look to the future, succession and finding a time when you might be able to have some money finally to retire, then you have to develop different skills. And often those skills come about by accident, not by being defining that they need those skills. So, part of the role I think that's really important and one that's really critical in the industry is that knowledge of business and commerce and being able to understand what it means to run a business. And sometimes that can be as simple as bringing somebody into a business, such as a finance person, not necessarily full time because that's expensive. But I always say that, get the best advice you can get that you can afford. And I think looking at having worked with companies now, both from media companies who've wanted to come in and buy into studios or other businesses and vice versa, is the amount of documentation that you need, the amount of due diligence that people need to do is immense. And it's very hard to run your business at the same time, you do your productions at the same time as run a fundraising campaign. And that is a challenge. And that's why I think there's so much need nowadays to be able to handhold a little bit without being patronizing, to get the best out of what your company's doing, get the best out of the way you work, and find a way of being able to tell that story. I would say that everything is telling a story. So a business plan is a story. It's a beginning, it's a middle, where we are now. It's where you hope the future might be. And, everybody wants to know about who are the people behind the business, what are their skills, what are their management skills, what is their distinct offering in the marketplace. I mean, some of these are not rocket science, as I've said earlier. These are things that should come second nature, but don't always come second nature to people. So getting investor ready is a big deal. And being able to talk to people sometimes who have no idea about your business. Ideally, we'd all want to have intelligent investors who understand our market, but that's not always the case. So a little bit like I did when I was at the Lego company is try to explain to people in manufacturing or in product design what creating a character and a story is. That's the same job you have to do. Is you have to look at your audience, who your potential investors are. If they know the industry, all well and good. If they don't know the industry, part of your job is to explain as simplistically as possible, or simply as possible, who you are, what your business is, where your ambitions are, and being ready to answer a myriad of questions over a long period of time, because it does take time, and it's not for the faint-hearted, unfortunately. And as money is harder to come by nowadays, they have the pick of the pack. And investing in kids particularly is a very tricky business at the moment. One hopes that it'll improve next year, and hopefully if organisations like Kate's organisation will be able to, particularly in the UK, get some more concessions and get some more advantages to help, investment into kids be more attractive again, as it was when we had tax efficient models such as SEIS and EIS, which gave investors a tax bonus, a tax advantage if they were to take the risk to invest in a company or in a portfolio, a feature film or a TV series. So, I'm hopeful the future will look bright. And we will see the growth of the industry again as we get out of this depression and economic decline. But I'm so excited this last couple of years that I have achieved getting investment into companies and into projects, and seeing a founder, one in particular who will remain nameless, realize that after X number of years that he literally was going to get support, some financial support, but also be able to go away with some of his own money, was remarkable. And it was very heartening. And I think a few tears were shed on both sides. So, that it can work out in the end if you do your homework.
Is that like a personal comment to me? I should do my homework, or is that like a general comment?
I don't think I should say, Julian.
but by not saying you've told me everything I need to know, fair enough. Just flipping, you mentioned when we were talking about cartoon, you mentioned the two pitching events, Cartoon Movie and Cartoon Forum. And last year in Cartoon Forum in 2023, there was an initiative called Animated UK Meets Europe. And you were a big part of that. And the whole initiative was created to show Europe that we still want to work with them. And I think it was pretty clear from attending that Europe really wants to work with us, or continue to work with us, or increase work with us. What is there anything more that UK producers can be doing to build on what was? I mean, the pitches that went on there and the discussions that went on there. Do you think we're doing enough?
I think that it was an amazing initiative for a start, and something that was remarkable that Cartoon as an organisation worked and suggested with the broadcasters was possible, because since Brexit, we have not contributed to Creative Europe, so therefore we're not eligible to join. Hopefully that will change as we have in this country a new government, and hopefully, an engagement with our industry. I think prior to the initiative, it was noticeable that the UK were not necessarily coming to Cartoon Forum in as many as used to come, which was a surprise. And obviously now we're in a situation where this year we're still not eligible to pitch. But having said that, I do think that if you look at how many people have been very successful at pitching at Cartoon Forum and realise their projects, then, it is an important event. And I just hope that we can find a solution to how the UK can continue to be represented. I know that both Cartoon have huge respect for UK creativity. We've always been a big part of Cartoon over the years. And I think you're right, talking to many of the European producers who you might have thought would have been resistant and actually jumping for joy when we were no longer as UK contingent able to go and therefore take the slots. I think that some may have felt like that, but actually the majority understand the value that our industry, our animators, our storytellers, our studios produce. And I think that one of the responsibilities really at this time for all of us is really to continue that dialogue with Europe, with the European partners, and to, talk about our excellence, etc., which I know all of the trade bodies are doing. And I think one of the other things, talking to some of the movers and shakers across Europe is critically important. But equally, there are other places. Where else in the world are there opportunities? And there are opportunities elsewhere in the world. And that's about going out and finding them. I think going back to the European community is what was very, very heartening to me was when after Brexit, I got a phone call from a pretty major and respected European media company, despite Brexit, saying we'd like to invest in a UK studio. And I had to ask the question, well, why would you do that? And also our tax credit isn't as high as elsewhere. And the bottom line is it's the creativity that we have. And I know we all say that and it's a bit pat, but the bottom line is that particularly in preschool, we are preeminent. But I think that's moving beyond now. You'll see that there's more commissions for 6 to 9-year-old projects, and also specials, features, and an opportunity in adult animation. So I think we do forget sometimes that we do kind of box above our weight, as the expression goes, and that we are very attractive. We may not financially as yet have all the advantages that other territories or other producers have, but we certainly have a creative level that people respect. And, we see that all the time, with particularly if you look at the initiative, the UK initiative, a couple of those shows are close to financing. And one has come from a relative newcomer to our industry, who started as an animator. So, there are green shoots. And I think that, everything's there for the taking. If you look into the market and understand, where you sit and find those right partners and opportunities, but it does take you to make the first approach, potentially, or to find other places until we get back into Cartoon Forum that we can get those connections again.
No, absolutely. My next question, I'm going to tell you what my question was, but I almost feel like not bothering because it was, the next question was, so what's next for you? But I know your level of discretion and confidentiality, so you probably can't answer that.
I can't answer that, actually. You'd be surprised to hear that. I do keep my cards close to myself. I think that one of the things that's been really interesting for me is that I was offered an opportunity to come and mentor some female founders for Creative UK. And I suppose what I learned from that is that I have focused for a while in the kids, family, and adult animation, live action, etc. space, but that actually I have a broader background than that. And I think what's been interesting for me across the 6 amazing individuals that I'm working with, who are at different stages, they're female founders, looking to be entrepreneurial, that there are other opportunities out there in the marketplace across genres, because they're all about storytelling, etc. So that might be a move that I might do, but otherwise I have a couple of other things up my sleeve if I can find the time, and people I'd like to work with. And, I'm looking forward to the future. I think it's going to be tough between now and maybe the spring, but I'm busy, I'm very fortunate, and I thank God every day that I'm busy, but I can always do more work, as you know, Julian. But I think that we can think beyond, diversify beyond our core of what we do, and take those skills and hopefully be able to contribute to other businesses and other people. Because at the end of the day, I wish I'd had a mentor when I was first very lonely working at the Daily Mirror, a woman mainly feeling on her own, but actually learning the value of having somebody to talk to, and be able to give some guidance, not tell you what to do because that's not the way it should work, but just to point out opportunities and questions that you should ask. So I think in answer to your question, I hope to remain doing what I'm doing and adding value. I hope that I can expand my horizons a little bit. Remember some of the other genres also that I did. And continue to have a bit of fun occasionally. That would be nice.
But no more fire breathing.
No more fire eating, not yet.
Oh, who knows? Who knows? Listen, just sort of wrapping things up now. I'm just listening to. I mean, I've known you for a while and listening, to the things that you've done. And there's a lot I've learned about, what you did at Lego. Although I knew you during that time, I had no idea the depth to which you had gone to understand the business. And you've been very, very successful in everything you've turned your hand to in your career. And you're incredibly well respected and loved by everybody in this industry. But I wanted to ask you just a couple of quick questions as we finish up. Over the years, what do you think the best piece of advice is that you have ever been given?
The best piece of advice, and I didn't always listen to it in the early days, was actually listen. Because I think it's very easy to get nervous or and just answer very quickly without understanding what someone's asking you. So that's a really good skill that I wish I'd learned a little bit earlier. I think when you're younger and you think you know more than you do know, you can make assumptions, and I think that's a dangerous thing. So I think that's something that I had wished somebody had said to me. You need to listen more. And I think, being a journalist, I developed that technique, but have not always stuck to it. I think the other thing that, to a degree, is sometimes I'm probably too caring. That sounds not a bad trait, but I think you can spend a lot of time and not always questioning people's motives, and I'm much better at that now. So I think there are a number of things like that, and I wish I'd had a mentor earlier. That would have been my whole thing in life, and I think it's not like a life coach per se. It's somebody that you respect in your industry, who can challenge you. And I think some of us are not very good at being challenged. And I think we should all be able to be challenged and not take it personally, because it is for your own good. But, I've certainly not I've not done everything well, and I have made mistakes, and some of them have been quite costly and quite upsetting. But that's the nature of when you grow via a number of industries and different sets of people. You hope that you can learn by your mistakes, and move forward and help other people not make the mistakes that you made, because it can be very painful personally to yourself when you're in business or in an industry, for something to go wrong, and the impact that it can have both on you, but your family, etc. So I think it's life is a journey. And I've been seeing I sometimes say the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I'm very pleased to say now that I'm very content in what I do. I'm very lucky to have the kinds of clients and people I work with, and that's not being kind of emotional. That's literally kind of where I am, and that's a good thing to be able to say at this point. It may not last, however. Something terrible might be coming around the corner, some ogre that I will end up being kind of working with, and we'll see where that goes. But at the moment, I am positive. I'm very resilient, and I think that's another thing that's important for us all in our business, is to be resilient. And being English, sometimes we do moan too much.
Surely not.
I think sometimes sit back and realise that this is not life or death. Hopefully for most people, but that actually it is entertainment, creativity, and it will go through our trials and tribulations, but we have to somehow find a way through it, and find the best if you can.
Sure. My final question to you, which is, how did it feel being asked the questions?
I absolutely loathe being questioned. I can't tell you how uncomfortable it makes me feel, because I've spent most of my life asking questions, and my role being finding out information about other people. And actually, other than when you are a showbiz person where you have to put your own personality into it, most of it is about being able to listen and be able to report and not editorialize. So this has been, for me, quite stressful. And not something that I enjoy that much, but it's certainly been fun doing it with you, Julian. You're very easy to talk to, and obviously I am a great fan of FSTVS and what Rob's doing, and I'm delighted if I'm making any sense or giving anything that is useful to the poor audience who might be listening to me. So apologies, and thank you very much for treating me with kid gloves. It's been I actually have enjoyed it, but don't invite me too often Or again.
Too often or again. Noted. Vanessa, thank you so much. I know you're crazy busy. It's been such a delight chatting to you as always.
My pleasure. And I probably will not want to listen to it, but we'll see.
Take care.
Well, there you go. A lovely chat with Vanessa Chapman. Considering how much Vanessa doesn't enjoy being on the receiving end of questions, I think that was a majestic performance. Some wonderful insights into how and where she operates in the industry, though I would have liked to have heard a little more on the fire eating, bobsledding and rally driving. Next time, perhaps. Many thanks to Odelia Sikinga for her advice and editing skills on this episode. And, as always, a massive thanks to Julian Scott for hosting. Information about Film London can be found at filmlondon.org/animation. Well worth a visit. And once again, a huge thank you to Liberry Consulting for all their support in making this podcast series a reality. Check out their industry-related training courses on the Festivus website now. Thanks everyone, and come back soon for more episodes.